October 20th, 1944. Red Beach, Leyte Island, Philippines. The surf is shallow and warm, but it is stained by smoke and pulverized coral. Landing craft grind their ramps down and the first wave spills out, rifles held high, boots sucking into wet sand. Overhead, the sky is loud with engines and distant thunder, the kind that does not come from weather. Naval gunfire rolls in slow, heavy pulses from the Gulf, each blast shoving air into your chest. General Douglas MacArthur steps forward through the churned water, camera shutters clicking, aides shouting to be heard over the roar. The beach smells of cordite and salt and burning palm. A signalman's flag snaps in the wind. Radios crackle with the same message repeated in different voices and accents. A tide of confirmations landing successful, foothold secured, armor coming ashore. And far from this beach, across the sea and across the hierarchy of an empire already stretched thin, Japanese admirals listen to those confirmations as if each one is a nail being driven. In Tokyo, inside the Navy Ministry's operations rooms, the air is stale with cigarette smoke and sweat trapped under uniforms. Chart tables are crowded with rulers and grease pencils. Pin flags stand in clusters like bristling thorns. An aide reads out intercepted reports and field transmissions, his voice steady only by discipline. The phrase that matters lands on the table like a weight MacArthur has returned. Admiral Toyoda Soemu, Commander-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet, does not shout. He does not need to. The men around him already know what Leyte means. Leyte is not just another island. Leyte is a door into the central Philippines, a base for airfields, a wedge into the maritime arteries that feed Japan's remaining holdings. Lose Leyte, and the map stops being a map and starts being a list of what will fall next. Toyoda's finger traces the sea lanes south of Formosa, down toward the Philippines, then west toward the oil fields Japan cannot live without. He understands the arithmetic of ships and fuel, and he understands something worse, the arithmetic of time. Every island we yield becomes a stone in their road, one staff officer says, voice low, almost reverent, as if naming a curse. Toyoda answers with the blunt clarity of a man who has watched the tide turn month by month. Then we break the road at Leyte. If we fail there, we will not rebuild it. That is the mood in the room, not hope, not confidence, but a forced decision, a hardening into action because the alternative is to accept that the Philippines will be severed piece by piece, and that what is severed cannot be stitched back. Orders go out under the name Show Go, Victory Operation. In practice, it is a gamble with the last large elements of the fleet. The plan is complicated because desperation always is. Decoys to pull American carriers north, battleships and heavy cruisers to drive into the landing areas, night attacks through narrow straits. It is a plan that assumes speed, coordination, and luck. The three things Japan has less and less of. South of Japan, in the inland sea and forward anchorages, captains and crews prepare as if for a funeral that might still be interrupted by a miracle. Lines are cast off, boilers are fed. Ammunition is hoisted up from magazines that smell of oil and metal. The decks of heavy cruisers glisten with spray and grime. On battleships, men run their hands over steel that feels cold even in the tropics. As if the ship itself knows, Admiral Kurita Takeo, tasked with leading the powerful center force, stands aboard his flagship with a face carved from exhaustion. His formation includes battleships and cruisers that look invincible on paper, but paper does not show the fuel shortages, the thin air cover, the submarines that prowl ahead like sharks. It does not show the pilots Japan no longer has in depth, the replacements trained in a hurry, the flight decks that will soon be empty. Kurita reads the operation brief and speaks to his staff in the plain tone of a man who has learned not to lie to himself. We are going to a place where the enemy can strike us all day and all night. We will go anyway, another admiral. Ozawa Jisaburo prepares the northern force, the carriers that will act as bait. He knows his carrier air groups are shadows of what they once were. He knows he is being asked to pull the enemy's attention with ships that may not be able to fight their way back. Yet he gives the order because duty in this moment is not victory. It is to buy a chance, any chance, for the rest. On Leyte, MacArthur's beachhead expands hour by hour. Trucks grind inland. Engineers clear obstacles. Medics crouch in sand, hands red, faces blank with focus. The American advance is not a single leap. It is a machine that keeps moving, always bringing more behind the front, always turning captured ground into another platform for the next push. That is what terrifies the Japanese admirals most. Not one battle, but the pattern. A landing becomes an airfield becomes a net, and once the net tightens around an island, no reinforcement arrives, no counterstroke retakes what is lost. The sea itself becomes enemy territory. In Tokyo, Toyoda looks again at Leyte on the chart. Around him, the room falls into the kind of silence that only exists when everyone is thinking the same thing and does not want to say it out loud. If MacArthur is not stopped here, the Empire's perimeter will not bend. It will crack, and every crack will widen. Night settles over the Philippine Sea like an oil slick, dark and heavy, broken only by the pale wake lines of warships pushing south. Steel hulls cut the water with a steady hiss. On the bridges, red lights keep faces half hidden, turning eyes into small reflective points. Below, the ships vibrate with the deep heartbeat of turbines. Men try to sleep in hot compartments that stink of sweat and fuel, but the air is too tense for real rest. Admiral Kurita Takeo stands on the bridge wing, binoculars raised, watching the black horizon. A messenger brings him fresh signals. The paper in his hand feels damp, as if the sea has already climbed into the ink. Submarines have hit them. Reports come in fast, uneven. A cruiser gone, a ship listing. Men in the water. Each message is short, stripped of emotion by necessity. But the silence after reading is full of it. Kurita turns to his chief of staff. His voice is quiet, but it carries in the confined space. This is how it begins, not with glory, but with bleeding. The words are not poetry. They are a warning. The enemy does not need to win a grand surface duel. The enemy only needs to keep cutting. Further north, Admiral Ozawa Jisaburo's carriers move like ghosts in a line. Decks dim, aircraft tied down. Their planes are fewer than they should be. Their pilots younger than they should be. The carrier crews know what they are, now a lure. Ozawa studies the sea chart under a shaded lamp. He speaks to a captain beside him, a man whose uniform is crisp but whose eyes are tired. We will draw them to us. If they come, it means the plan is working. He pauses, then adds the sentence that makes the room colder. If they do not come, it means they do not fear us. There is no argument to that. Fear is the currency that Japan can no longer mint. In Tokyo, Admiral Toyoda listens to updates as if they are being read at a bedside. Each report is another measurement of pulse, another sign of a patient already too weak. Shogo is in motion, and once motion begins, it consumes fuel, consumes time, consumes ships. The staff officers present him with options, arrows on maps, changes in timing. Toyoda's response is restrained, but hard. Do not chase illusions, he says. Strike the landing. Strike the transports. If we cannot tear out their supply chain, then even if we sink a battleship, the invasion lives. He is speaking the language of collapse without naming it, because naming it is forbidden. On Leyte itself, the American beachhead is expanding beyond the sand into the green interior. Rain drifts through in sudden sheets. Jungle heat makes every movement feel heavier. Infantry slog along muddy tracks. Helmets beaded with water. Rifles wrapped in grime. Engineers lay down corduroy roads. Trucks push forward. Tires throwing brown spray. Artillery is hauled into position, metal barrels pointing inland like fingers. Above it all, aircraft circle. Fighters and bombers slide through clouds and sunlight. The sky filled with the sense that America owns altitude the way a landlord owns property. That is what the Japanese admirals are confronting now. Not simply MacArthur's name, not simply the spectacle of his return, but a system that arrives and stays. Each island becomes a platform. Each platform extends the reach of the next. At sea, Kurita's center force approaches the Sibuyan Sea. The day breaks gray, then bright. The surface becomes a mirror that betrays them. Lookouts shout sightings. The first American carrier planes arrive like insects that grow larger and louder by the second. You can almost feel it from the deck, the moment the sky turns hostile, the whine of dives, the sharp crack of anti-aircraft guns, black puffs of flak blooming. Men on deck crouch behind anything that might stop shrapnel, which is to say, almost nothing. A bomb hits near a battleship. The ship shudders. Water leaps up in a white column. Another strike slams a cruiser. Flames climb. Smoke rolls out thick as storm clouds. Kurita watches. Jaw clenched, hands gripping the rail until the knuckles pale. He says it to no one in particular, but everyone hears. This is their strength. They do not need to see our faces. They only need coordinates. His staff urges him to turn back, to preserve what remains. Kurita's eyes remain on the burning horizon. He seems older in the smoke. If we turn back now, the Philippines are already lost. He replies, if we go forward, they may still be lost. But at least we die facing the enemy. The sentence spreads down the chain, repeated by officers in different words, carried like a grim prayer through compartments filled with vibration and fear. In the afternoon, Kurita makes the decision to reverse course briefly, then turns again toward San Bernardino Strait. It is not indecision. It is a man trying to solve an impossible equation with ships that are being erased from the board. In Tokyo, a junior officer dares to speak the thought that sits in everyone's throat. Even if we win it later, can we hold what remains? Toyoda's reply is not kind, but it is honest in the way only crisis can force. You do not understand. We are not deciding how to hold. We are deciding how to delay the end. The words land harder than any bomb. They are the confession behind every order, the truth behind every arrow on every map. And still, out on the sea, the formations press forward, because the admirals have spoken and the fleet is committed, and somewhere ahead the Gulf waits, full of transports and guns and the relentless motion of MacArthur's advance. Dawn comes hard and sudden at the mouth of San Bernardino Strait. The sea is a moving sheet of steel, chopped by wind, streaked with whitecaps that catch the light like shattered glass. Kurita's ships slide through the narrow passage in a long, dark file. Silhouettes against a paling sky. On the bridges, officers lean forward, straining their eyes as if sheer will can pull enemy ships into view. They expect carriers. They expect a wall of American battleships. They expect the decisive clash that will either rip the invasion apart or crush what remains of Japan's surface fleet. Instead, what they see at first feels almost absurd. Small ships, escort carriers, destroyers. A scattering of thin gray lines on the horizon that looks too fragile to be real. It is the kind of sight that makes a veteran commander wonder if it is a trick. Kurita's staff officers exchange glances that carry both relief and dread. Relief because this is not the full American battle line. Dread because if it is not here, it is somewhere else. Waiting, a signal comes up from the flag plot. Contact reported. The men speak in clipped phrases, hands moving over charts, rangefinders turning. The guns are ordered ready. Turrets pivot with a slow mechanical patience. The barrels seem to inhale. Kurita's voice is controlled, almost flat. If we are here, we must strike. Do not hesitate. His words are for the fleet, but also for himself. The decision to push through the strait has already been paid for in blood and smoke. Now it must buy something. Out of the morning haze, the American destroyers charge, not retreat, not a cautious screen. They come forward as if to ram the entire Japanese center force out of existence by force of courage alone. Their wakes flare bright and angry. Shell splashes rise around them, towering columns that crash down and drench decks. Yet they keep coming. On the Japanese ships, officers stare through optics at the impossible sight. Tiny silhouettes leaping over waves, throwing up spray, turning directly toward battleships that can erase them with a single broadside. The emotion that rises is not admiration. It is confusion. Then torpedoes enter the equation. They streak through the water unseen. But their presence is felt in sudden turns, in shouted helm orders, in the sharp angle of a heavy ship forced to maneuver like a frightened animal. A battleship heels, water rushing along her side. A cruiser swerves. The formations begin to spread, to lose the neat geometry that makes them deadly. Kurita watches the American destroyers laying smoke and charging through it. He mutters, voice almost lost under the rumble. They are throwing themselves into the mouth of a tiger. A staff officer answers without thinking, then realizes what he has said. Because they know the tiger is starving. The words hang in the bridge air. Starving. That is what the fleet has become. Starving for fuel. Starving for air cover. Starving for trained men. Still dangerous, but no longer able to bite for long. The battle off Samar becomes a blur of speed, smoke, and sudden violence. Japanese shells rip through water and air. American planes dive from the escort carriers with bombs that are too small for battleships. Rockets that do little against armor. Machine gun fire that seems like an insult against steel. But the planes keep coming, wave after wave. Attacking not because each strike is lethal, but because constant pressure makes even the strongest hand shake. On a Japanese cruiser, men scramble to put out fires started by near misses, by fragments, by accidents made fatal in battle conditions. Ammunition cooks off. Smoke pours from vents. The deck becomes slick with water and oil. The smell is choking, a mix of burned paint and cordite. Kurita's ships, built to fight a traditional battle line engagement, are being unstitched by chaos. He cannot see the whole fight. No one can. The horizon is blocked by smoke banks. Signals are delayed. Reports conflict. A ship claims a kill. Another claims it is sinking. A third is suddenly gone from the list because no one can raise it on radio. Then a message comes in that changes everything. American fast carriers have been located north. The decoy has worked. Ozawa has drawn Halsey away. Kurita has a narrow opening to fall upon the transports in Leyte Gulf. The plan, against all odds, is offering a path. For a moment, the bridge feels like it has more air. A staff officer leans close to Kurita. Admiral, we can reach the landing area. The transports are ahead. Kurita looks out at the smoke, at the white splashes, at the destroyers still darting like angry insects. He thinks of the beach on Leyte. He thinks of what Toyoda said. Strike the landing. Strike the transports. Then another report arrives, and the air turns thin again. American battleships may be returning. American aircraft are massing. Kurita's own ships are scattered. Ammunition is being spent. Some of his captains are reporting damage he cannot ignore. And the American resistance, though small in tonnage, is enormous in effect. It has made the Japanese force feel surrounded, even when it is not. Kurita's face tightens. You can see the calculation behind his eyes. The kind of calculation that is not about honor, but about whether the action will produce anything beyond a heroic obituary. He speaks slowly, as if every syllable is being weighed. If we press into the Gulf, we may destroy transports, but we may also lose the fleet entirely. No one replies, because the truth is already known. The fleet is not replaceable, and even if transports are destroyed, the Americans can bring more. They can replace ships, they can replace men, they can replace airplanes. Japan cannot. In Tokyo, the same logic haunts Admiral Toyoda's staff. They want a decisive blow, but they know the enemy's industrial tide. They know that every American loss is painful, but not fatal. For Japan, even one more lost battleship is a limb cut away. Kurita makes his decision. He orders a withdrawal. It is the most controversial order of the entire battle, and he knows it the moment he gives it. He knows what people will say, that he flinched, that he failed, that he let the chance slip. But he also knows another truth that only a commander at sea can know in that moment. If he stays, he may win a tactical moment and lose the war even faster. As the Japanese ships turn away, the American destroyers do not chase like victors. They are too battered, too few. They simply survive. Their survival becomes its own kind of victory, because survival means the transports live. And if the transports live, MacArthur's advance continues. Ozawa's decoy force, north of the battle, is struck brutally. His carriers are hammered by waves of American aircraft until decks burn and hulls list. He watches his ships die knowing the bait was taken, knowing he did what he was ordered to do. In the aftermath, the Japanese admirals begin to speak differently, not in public statements, not in slogans, but in the private language of men who have just seen the sea itself change sides. One staff officer, writing late at night, puts it in words that are almost too simple. We can no longer decide the battle. We can only endure it. And on Leyte, while the smoke of naval combat drifts away, bulldozers keep pushing sand, trucks keep rolling inland, airstrips begin to take shape. The foothold becomes a grip. For the Japanese Navy, Leyte Gulf is not just a defeat. It is a revelation. The Empire's islands are becoming isolated stones. Each one that falls cannot be reinforced. Each one that is bypassed will starve. And the man on the beach, the one who came ashore with cameras and a promise, now has the momentum of an entire war machine behind him. November 1944. The weather over Leyte shifts daily, rain curtains sliding across the mountains, then clearing to reveal a sky that belongs to American aircraft. The jungle steams. Rivers swell and spill into the low ground. The fighting inland becomes a slow grind of mud, disease, and artillery. At sea, the Japanese Navy tries to do what it has always done when an army needs help: send ships. But Leyte is no longer a target in open water. It is a trap surrounded by airfields, patrols, submarines, and radar. Every approach route is watched. Every convoy is hunted. The Gulf is not just dangerous. It is informed. The Americans know what is coming before it arrives. In Manila, Japanese naval officers gather in a cramped room with maps spread over tables. The paper is damp at the edges. The air smells of mildew and exhausted men. Outside, the city still functions. But the weight of coming disaster presses into every street. A rear admiral points to Ormoc Bay on the western side of Leyte, a crescent of coastline that seems, on a map, like a doorway. "We send reinforcements here," he says. "Night landings. Fast ships. We unload and leave before dawn." Another officer answers with the tone of a man reading a funeral program. They have patrol planes over the bay. They have radar on destroyers. They have fighters that can be overhead within minutes. Night is not what it used to be. That sentence spreads through Japanese naval circles in those weeks. Night is not what it used to be. The Imperial Navy once owned the dark It trained for it. It built doctrine around it. Its crews could find an enemy by feel and instinct and the faint glow of phosphorescence. But now, American radar pierces the black. American fighters hunt at dusk and dawn. American destroyers prowl like wolves with electric eyes. The Japanese admirals still order convoys because they have no choice. If Leyte is lost, the Philippines cannot be held. If the Philippines cannot be held, the sea lanes to the south are broken. If the sea lanes are broken, Japan's remaining strength becomes a candle in wind. So the convoys run. They come down from Luzon in small groups. Destroyers and transport ships, sometimes accompanied by light cruisers. They carry troops packed tight, ammunition stacked high, food and medical supplies that smell of rice and diesel. Soldiers clutch rifles, faces hollow from the knowledge that they are sailing into a killing zone. On the bridge of a Japanese destroyer, a captain watches the shoreline silhouette slide by under a moon that feels too bright. The sea is dark, but every wave crest seems to glow, giving away motion. He speaks to his navigator, voice low. If we are spotted, we will not outrun the air. The navigator does not answer right away. Then he says the thought that everyone has. Then we must not be spotted. But the Americans are already there. Patrol aircraft find the wakes. Radar picks up contact. By the time the Japanese ships reach Ormoc Bay, the air begins to fill with engine noise. It is first distant, then rapidly closer. The sound becomes a ceiling pressing down. The first bombs fall with a hiss that becomes a slap and then a roar. Water erupts. The destroyer shudders. Men on deck are thrown against rails. A transport ship takes a hit and the flames climb fast, fueled by cargo and panic. Soldiers leap into the bay, thrashing, some caught in burning oil. American fighters come low and mean, strafing the decks, raking the water where men swim. The bay becomes a circle of death lit by fire, smoke and tracer lines. In Tokyo, the reports arrive as lists. Convoy attacked. Ship sunk. Troops lost. Supplies lost. A naval staff officer reads them aloud, hands steady, face not. Admiral Toyoda listens without interruption. His eyes move from the paper to the map, to the window and back again, as if looking for a place to set down what he is feeling. When the officer finishes, Toyoda speaks into the silence. We are feeding men into a furnace. Someone else, bolder than he should be, says, then we stop sending them. Toyoda's head turns. His gaze is sharp enough to cut. If we stop, the army dies faster. If we continue, the navy dies faster. Choose which death you prefer. That is what the Japanese admirals are confronting now. Not the question of how to win, but how to arrange the sequence of loss so that the collapse is delayed. In the Philippines, Vice Admiral Shima Kiyohide, overseeing parts of the naval effort, receives field reports from Ormoc and the surrounding waters. He reads about ships hit at dawn, ships hit at dusk, ships hit under cloud cover, ships hit in rain. Weather no longer protects. Darkness no longer protects. Speed only shortens the time before contact. A subordinate says, "We can still land troops. Some get through." Shima answers with bitter realism. Some get through, yes, but not enough. And what arrives has no heavy weapons, no fuel, no food for long. We are delivering bodies, not strength. The American machine keeps tightening. Airfields on Leyte expand. Fighters range farther. Bombers strike ports on Cebu and Luzon. Submarines patrol the routes the Japanese must use. Destroyers with radar push into the narrow waters like hunters entering a cave. The Japanese admirals begin to talk about islands the way surgeons talk about limbs. Can this one be saved? Can that one be sacrificed? Which can be bypassed? Which must be held to prevent a faster bleed? Each island is an equation. Each equation ends the same way now. Once an island is cut off, it stays cut off. There is no return tide, no reinforcement miracle. No second chance. The Americans do not need to crush every garrison immediately. They can isolate, starve, and move on. And that is what makes MacArthur's advance feel unstoppable. It is not just an attack. It is a process. In early December, another convoy attempt ends in burning ships off Ormoc. Japanese sailors pull survivors from the water while American planes still circle, looking for movement. The sailors' faces are gray with exhaustion. Their hands shake as they tie off lines and haul men aboard. They do not look like conquerors. They look like men trying to keep a sinking house standing by carrying buckets. A destroyer captain, soaked and coughing from smoke, says to his executive officer, "We are not bringing the Philippines back. We are only paying for the time to lose them." The executive officer stares out at the bay, where black smoke drifts over jungle ridges. "Then why keep paying?" he whispers. The captain does not answer immediately. Then he says, "Because the Admiralty will not admit the debt is unpayable. But some of them are admitting it, quietly, to each other, in the guarded language of officers who know microphones exist everywhere." By late 1944, the Japanese admirals understand the pattern with brutal clarity. Every lost island is a door locked from the outside. Every convoy run costs ships Japan cannot replace. Every attempt to reinforce only confirms what the Americans already know. MacArthur's footholds are turning into air power. Air power is turning into isolation. Isolation is turning into irreversible collapse. And ahead, beyond Leyte, the next islands wait. Mindoro. Luzon, the heart of the Philippines. The admirals look at those names and feel the same chill, because they know that if Leyte could not be stopped, the rest will not be stopped either. December 15th, 1944, off Mindoro Island, Philippines. The sea is rough, whipped by winter winds that shove white foam across the surface. Landing craft slam and rise, their hulls groaning. Beyond them, transport ships sit heavy in the water, decks crowded, smoke drifting from funnels in low streaks. The sky is a battlefield even before the first soldier reaches shore. American fighters cut through cloud gaps, turning, diving, climbing with the casual confidence of pilots who know they have numbers and fuel and forward bases. The Japanese answer not with a fleet, not with a coordinated strike, but with individual aircraft that arrive like desperate messages. Kamikaze, the first one comes in low, then suddenly climbs as if gathering nerve. It breaks through flak, wing panels shuddering, and then it drops straight into a ship with a flash that looks too bright to be real. Fire blossoms, metal shrieks, men scatter, some on fire, some stunned, some falling. On the American ships, guns hammer relentlessly. The air fills with tracer lines, a net of glowing threads trying to catch each incoming plane before it hits. On the Japanese side, the Admiralty watches the reports and understands what this means. If Mindoro becomes an American air base, then the skies over Luzon will no longer belong to Japan, even in fragments. Mindoro is small on a map, but in this war, small islands are levers. In Manila, senior Japanese naval officers meet with army counterparts in rooms that feel too warm, too crowded, too tense. Manila still has electricity in places, still has traffic, still has shopkeepers trying to pretend the future can be bargained with. But the military men no longer pretend, not in their eyes. An army general points at the map. If they build airfields on Mindoro, our supply line to Luzon is threatened. A naval officer, weary and blunt, replies, "Threatened is a soft word. It will be severed." The army man's mouth tightens. "Then we must destroy the landing." The naval officer shakes his head once. "With what? Our surface fleet cannot appear in daylight. Our airfields are bombed. Our pilots are gone. We can strike with special attack units. Yes, but that is not a strategy. It is a scream. The word is not repeated, but it is remembered. A scream. Tokyo receives confirmation that Mindoro is falling into American hands and that the airstrips will soon be active. Admiral Toyoda sits with his staff, listening to assessments. Some officers cling to phrases like decisive defense and final line. Toyoda does not correct them publicly, but in a private exchange later, he speaks more plainly. Every time they take an airfield, they gain a longer arm, he says. And every time their arm grows, our islands shrink, his subordinate asks. Can we concentrate for a counterstroke? Toyoda's answer is the answer of a man watching a wall collapse brick by brick. Concentrate where? On what fuel? Under what air cover? Concentration is a luxury of the strong. As Mindoro's airfields begin operating, American aircraft reach deeper. They strike shipping lanes. They bomb ports. They hammer air bases. They make the movement of Japanese troops and supplies not merely dangerous, but nearly impossible. This is the moment when many Japanese admirals internalize a brutal truth. They are no longer fighting for sea control. They are fighting for the right to move at all. January 9th, 1945. Lingayen Gulf, Luzon. The water in the Gulf is churned by the approach of a vast invasion fleet. The horizon is crowded with ships. It looks like a city of steel floating on the sea. Naval gunfire begins before dawn, turning the coastline into a line of smoke and fire. Shells slam into beaches and hills. Palm trees explode into fragments. Sand leaps into the air in dirty fountains. Japanese aircraft come in waves, but the waves are uneven, punctured, often suicidal. Some dive straight for ships. Some break apart under flak. Some wobble with damage and still try to hit something before they die. On one transport, an American sailor sees a plane coming in, wings shredded, smoke trailing, and the pilot still holds it steady. The sailor thinks, not with hatred, but with stunned disbelief, that a human being can force themselves to do that. Then the plane hits and the world becomes heat and noise. The kamikaze attacks hurt. They sink ships. They kill men. They frighten even seasoned crews. But they do not stop the landing. Because the landing is not a single ship. It is not a single convoy. It is a system with redundancy. If one transport burns, another unloads. If one ship sinks, another takes its place. The American operation continues like water flowing around stones. In Manila, the Japanese Naval Command hears the reports and the tone shifts from anger to something close to resignation. Not surrender, not acceptance, but the grim recognition that the Philippines are being taken in stages and that each stage removes options permanently. A Japanese admiral speaks to a room of officers and says, "We are watching the outer door close, and we have no key." He taps the map of Luzon. If they hold this, the southern resources are cut off. Then the war becomes arithmetic we cannot survive. Another officer asks, "What of reinforcement to the garrisons? What of counterattack?" The admiral's eyes narrow. Reinforcement now is not reinforcement. It is delivery. The word lands heavily because everyone knows what it implies. Delivery of men to isolation. Delivery of supplies that will be destroyed before use. Delivery of hope to a place where hope has no food. As American troops push inland from Lingayen, they move through rice paddies and towns, through roads lined with shattered trees. Tanks clatter forward. Engineers bridge streams. Artillery sets up in new positions almost as soon as the old ones are left behind. The American advance is not elegant. It is relentless. Japanese defenders fight hard in places. But their lines are broken by lack of fuel, lack of ammunition, lack of air support. Units become pockets. Pockets become isolated strong points. Strong points become starving camps. The pattern repeats, and every repetition teaches the same lesson. Once cut off, never reconnected. In the naval command rooms, Japanese admirals use fewer grand words. They speak in operational terms. But behind the terms is a steady, dawning understanding. Their empire had been built on movement across water, on the ability to shift strength from island to island, to reinforce, to counterstrike. MacArthur's campaign has turned that principle against them. He is not taking everything at once. He is taking the nodes that make everything else untenable. A staff officer, looking at the line of American bases, stretching from New Guinea to Leyte to Mindoro and now into Luzon, says quietly, "They are building a chain, link by link. We are losing links faster than we can even see them." Another officer replies, "Because we are no longer forging, we are only breaking." As the American forces close on Manila, the Japanese admirals recognize that the Philippines are not a single battlefield anymore. They are a collapsing structure, and every day MacArthur advances, the structure loses another support beam. The question that begins to surface, whispered in hallways, spoken only in private, is not whether the Philippines can be held. It is what happens to the war when the Philippines are gone. February 1945. The Philippines are no longer a frontier. They are a wound that will not close. Manila burns under layers of smoke that cling to the city like a shroud. The sound is constant artillery, collapsing masonry, rifle fire echoing down streets that once carried streetcars and commerce. The air tastes of ash and dust. Civilians move like shadows, faces blank, carrying what they can, stepping around rubble that still radiates heat. Outside the city, American columns keep pressing forward. Supply trucks roll in endless lines. Engineers repair roads as fast as they are cratered. Airfields multiply. Fighters rise and return in the same hour, operating with a rhythm that feels industrial rather than human. In Japanese naval circles, the tone is no longer about reversing. It is about what can still be shaped inside the collapse. In Tokyo, Admiral Toyoda sits before charts that now look more like an obituary than a plan. The Philippines, once a strategic shield, is being carved into isolated garrisons. Those garrisons still fight, but their fighting no longer affects the outcome. They are being reduced to symbols. And symbols do not stop supply chains. A senior staff officer offers a suggestion in the careful language of obedience. If we concentrate remaining naval air power, perhaps we can inflict losses that slow their timetable. Toyoda answers with a tired precision. Losses do not slow a nation that has more ships than we can count and more fuel than we can dream. Timetables are slowed by removing their bases. We are losing bases. He taps the map with a knuckle. It makes a dull sound on the paper. Once an island is taken and made into an airfield, it does not return to us. We have no mechanism to take it back. That is the core realization behind everything the Japanese admirals say in early 1945. Not that they are losing battles, that the nature of the war has changed beyond their ability to answer it. MacArthur's advance is not a spear thrust that can be parried. It is a stairway being built under his feet. Each step is concrete. Each step becomes a runway. Each step extends the reach of aircraft that hunt ships by day and now, with radar, guided night fighters, and coordinated patrols. Increasingly, by night, a naval officer in Tokyo says softly, "We used to move at night and hide by day. Now we are seen in both." Toyoda's response is a single sentence that sounds like a verdict. Then the sea is no longer ours. In the Philippines, Japanese admirals and senior officers who remain are forced to improvise within shrinking space. Communications are disrupted. Ports are damaged. Ammunition stocks are scattered and often destroyed before they can be moved. Fuel becomes a myth. Even the ability to move a small convoy becomes a gamble with almost certain loss. An officer reports from a coastal command post that a supply attempt was annihilated within minutes of leaving harbor. He ends with the words that tell the whole story. "We could not even test the route." The admiral listening does not curse. He does not rage. He simply closes his eyes for a moment and says, "Then the island is already isolated. It only has not yet realized it." across the chain of islands. From Panay to Cebu to Mindanao, the same pattern repeats. American aircraft interdict. American submarines sink what tries to move. American surface patrols appear where Japanese commanders least want them, even when a Japanese garrison is bypassed rather than assaulted. It does not become a threat behind the lines. It becomes a trapped pocket that slowly consumes its own supplies and then its own strength. This is why the admirals speak of irreversible collapse. The empire had once relied on the ability to shift forces, to reinforce, to counterattack. Now, every attempt to reinforce becomes a loss, and every loss reduces the ability to try again. In late February 1945, a private meeting in Tokyo includes senior naval officers who have survived the last 2 years of disasters. Their uniforms are immaculate, but their faces carry the weight of men who have watched their best crews disappear into the sea. One of them, voice low, says the sentence that would have been unimaginable in 1941. "We cannot prevent their approach to the homeland if they keep taking bases." Another replies, "Then we must make them pay for each base." A third, older, answers with a harsh clarity, "We are paying with what cannot be replaced. They are paying with what they can." Silence follows. It is the silence of men realizing that even the language of sacrifice has become a trap, because sacrifice only matters if it changes the outcome. In the Philippines, MacArthur's forces continue their methodical conquest. The campaign is brutal and costly. Japanese defenders fight ferociously in places, sometimes to the last man. Civilians are caught in catastrophe. Cities are shredded. Yet the operational momentum does not break. American control of air and sea means that Japanese commanders can no longer choose where to fight. They can only react to where the Americans decide to land, and they can rarely concentrate enough strength to contest it. A Japanese naval officer stationed near a battered coastal installation watches American aircraft pass overhead in formation, silver shapes against a bright sky. He knows they are not even flying at the edge of their range. He hears their engines fade and then return again later. He says to the man beside him, "They come and go like they own the sky because they do." The other man replies, "And because we cannot reach them, that inability to reach is what defines the strategic collapse." The admirals are not just losing territory. They are losing the ability to influence the pace of loss. By early March 1945, Japanese assessments increasingly treat the Philippines as gone in strategic terms, even while fighting still rages. The islands are no longer a shield. They are a corridor for the enemy. American bases there will support strikes on the South China Sea, on Formosa, and on the routes Japan needs for survival. With each new airfield and anchorage, the ring tightens. In Tokyo, Toyoda speaks to his staff in a tone that feels like a final lesson. "We must accept that lost islands cannot be restored. We must plan for defense where defense is still possible." A younger officer asks, almost pleading, "Is there any point in holding out on islands already isolated?" Toyoda looks at him for a long moment. Then he answers with the cold honesty of a commander who knows the human cost of his words. They hold out because orders demand it. But strategically, they are already ghosts. The war is moving past them. That is what confronting MacArthur's advance does to the Japanese admirals. It forces them to acknowledge that a campaign can be unstoppable not because it is flawless, but because it is structured so that every success becomes infrastructure, and every piece of infrastructure creates the next success. In the end, what the admirals say is less about MacArthur as a man and more about the machine behind him. They say it in fragments, in private comments, in the bitter shorthand of professionals watching a system overwhelm another system. We cannot reinforce, we cannot retake, we cannot move, we cannot choose. And behind all of it, the final recognition. Once the Americans take an island and turn it into a base, it is no longer a battlefield. It is a permanent platform, a rung on a ladder that climbs steadily north. The Philippines. In late 1944 and early 1945 are that ladder being built. And the Japanese admirals, listening to the reports and watching the map, know exactly where it leads.